Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Ryan. I'm a former commando from the UK. Today we've got a little bit of news on Ukraine. We're going to jump straight into the map, get into this. I've changed back to the terrain style map just so we can see the gradient on the ground a little bit better, understand what the soldiers on the ground are actually fighting for, as opposed to just a white plain map with lines going through it. You can see a little bit more of the terrain that they have to fight through. It gives a better perspective, in my opinion, on how hard or how easy that ground is going to be taken. So let's just get straight into it. East region troops, let's have a look. Northwest Luhansk, and we're going to go to the northeastern point of the Oskil River. We're going to push straight to this area here. Now we can see from the 10th, there's a big open bit of ground there. Let me get my pen out. So this area is what we're looking at. And to look at it, you know, we can see a bit of a feature going straight through the middle of that up to Pishan. Zooming in a little bit more, we can see that the ground itself is, you know, it's rugged-ish terrain, but it's primarily fields. It looks as if this could be used for farming of some sort. It's effectively farmland, similar to that of Great Britain, where I live, okay? But Pishan, we can see that's an area of interest, possibly for Ukraine. However, the front line in this area, it dictates that neither Ukraine or Russia hold these four main points, these four little settlements here, as of the 10th anyway. But if we fast forward all the way to the current day, we can see that there's been prominent movement up towards this area, although we have to see a little bit further north to see that the front line where Russia have been defending from has actually pushed back a little bit. But let's talk about this area, Pishin, I think you pronounce it. It's a prominent feature in itself. It's a settlement. It doesn't look as if, as of yet, although this map is updated sporadically, it doesn't look yet that they've taken it. My thoughts is that they probably have. We're looking at around about 4 kilometers worth of territory here, and it's quite elongated. If we zoom in, I think we can't really see it too well on that style. So if we zoom in a little bit, there you go. See, all of the detail has disappeared. It's a settlement that is of interest to Ukraine. Whether or not they've taken that yet, hopefully they have, because it'll enable them to be able to push forward and use that as a bit of a supply zone. But we've got the other settlements neighbouring Tavyaka and Krokmaln. Now, the front line in terms of where Ukraine is pushing towards, where Russia is defending from, we've got a bit of a settlement here, Volodymyrka, and these two settlements here that are interesting. Let's see what this looks like on a different map. So you can see on the satellite view there that these settlements are fairly built up, although still quite rural. They're fairly built up. These areas are still fairly quite built up. And the ground itself doesn't look too difficult to push from, but we're not seeing that much movement. Now, the movement that we have seen, and I didn't think we'd see too much, we've seen a little bit of a pushback for Russian front line here. Ivanivka, we've seen that they've pushed out of there. They've possibly retreated to Yadin and these areas, Olyanka, and I'm not too sure why the reasons are. We'll get into the Institute of Study of War map, but we've seen no push forward from Ukraine's up to Pishin. I believe they've probably taken that line, but they definitely seem to be pushing on through this area here, utilizing these main roads, these main features that intersect with train tracks, I believe. So quite prominent in terms of resupply. It looks as if they're pushing them eastwards this way. So what we could potentially see is our friends in Ukraine pushing in this direction from Pishin, more so into this direction, and taking on the fight in these little settlements as they go forward. I'm not too sure why they're prioritizing themselves in this area. We've seen that east of Kupiansk has been quite difficult to take in the early days of the counteroffensive. Once they started pushing towards the north of the Oskil River, it was quite hard to defend from. Russia has constantly tried to bombard them with missile strikes and stuff. And this area is the area in which Russia actually tried to defend from. Okay, they didn't really push back as much in this area as they did in the other areas, certainly south of that region. Okay, troops. But yeah, we are seeing more of a pushback in this area. It would be interesting to see how this whole thing materializes in the next day or so, because this area is becoming a little bit of a hotspot. Let's zoom out a little bit to see what we have. Okay, so you've got main areas. Porovsk, we've mentioned. Then you've got these areas down here. Ukraine is closer to these areas in particular. Whether or not they're going to choose to push forward and fight there before they push for this northern point of Porovsk, I'm not too sure on that. But we can see that they are trying to develop this area to the north. Maybe it's got a bigger picture in mind to be able to control the northern point where they're bordering Russia. Maybe it looks something a little bit like this, and carry on downwards. If you think about the bigger picture, it would make sense to push them down, because they have to obviously fight in these Donetsk, in these oblast areas as well, Luhansk and Donetsk as well. So to carry on fighting eastward would strategically put them at a little bit of a disadvantage. So let's just look at it this way, troops. Okay, let me push the map a little bit further. So if Ukraine was to just continue to push east from every position on that front line, and they effectively had this area, what they would leave themselves vulnerable to is attack from the south. Okay, attack from this direction here. So what I think they're doing, and this is strategic now, what I think they're doing is they're going to push from the north, as we're seeing, take an area and dominating the land here. And we could see something that looks like this very roughly. They control that land there. And then with the intention of potentially pushing downwards as they gradually push eastward as well. What they're going to do is gradually take over land, but with the intention of pushing and continue to push down south, all right, into Luhansk, into Donetsk. It stops them being vulnerable from this position here. It stops them from being vulnerable. So if they continue to push east without covering the southern flank, obviously it makes them quite vulnerable to attack from this direction. Doesn't mean to say that they're not going to get that pushback anywhere, but what you don't want is a situation that looks like this, troops. Let's just say they're pushed forward in this direction. Let me change the pen color. Let's say they're pushed from all parts of that front line. You're going to see potential for Russia to be counteracting them every step of the way. Every time they push, they're getting hit from the south, and they're also getting hit from this position as well. Okay, so you got effectively two positions of which they're going to be attacked from. That might seem quite obvious to some guys, but they don't want to leave themselves open to that. Okay, so you don't want to be getting hit from smash from two sides. So I think what Ukraine is going to do to counteract that is potentially just fight on through the north, control a higher part of the northern region, these areas here, and then, fish hook downwards as soon as they've got a bit of control. They've obviously got troops who can support from the western side as well and continue that effort to south, and then start pushing into these oblast areas. But I would like to hear your thoughts on that. Again, I'm not a military strategist expert. This is just my honest thoughts. We've been quite accurate so far on that. But let's just get into some other news, troops. A little bit of an update in the east there. So this is something that I've been looking at over the past few minutes, and this has just came in by Bloomberg. It's quite fitting, really. Now, Ukraine's Vladimir Zelenskyy visited a military hospital in Kiev on Friday, and it was to mark the Day of the Defenders of Ukraine, where he handed out awards to doctors and wounded soldiers, wishing them a fast recovery. Let's have a look at this. Okay, so that's nice to see. Okay, it's nice to see that their efforts don't go unheard of, unseen. The man at the top is paying his respects correctly to the warriors who are fighting on the front line. Let's not forget about the doctors as well. It's nice to see that, troops. And here we see how a Ukrainian sniper is over 1,000 meters, nearly 1,200 meters away, and he's literally wiping out enemy forces. It's not a graphic scene or anything. We're not going to look at that anyway, but it just goes to show that we can look at maps all we want, and you don't really get the true bigger picture until you have a look at this. Kiev Independent, the insider, Kremlin-linked officers seek asylum in France. Kremlin-linked officers seek asylum in France. Wow, that's close to home. A member of Russia's security services, the FSB, and a member of the Russian mercenary organization Wagner have requested asylum in France. Testimonies provided will shed light on Russia's war crimes in Ukraine. Wow. Okay, so we've got potential guys who've been directly involved in, effectively war crimes. We're not going to say them directly involved in terms of it was their decision making, but they're involved nonetheless by appropriation. We just have to look at World War II, Nazis, the officers over there, they might not have been actively involved, or some of them might not have been actively involved in the slaughtering of people, but by appropriation, they were there, they witnessed, and most of them fled to Argentina, apparently. So, these guys deserve to be trialed just like everyone else if they have indeed been linked with war crimes. It's crazy. But this is the one I wanted to get into, guys. This little article. Now, Elon Musk said SpaceX cannot indefinitely fund the Starlink internet service in Ukraine and send it several thousand more terminals after reports suggested that his rocket company had asked the Pentagon to pay for the donations. So what that implies automatically is that the Pentagon went, no, sorry, we can't fund your satellites over there, which is interesting considering how much the American taxpayer, should we say, is actually funded. They've got over 18 billion and counting, I believe, into Ukraine at this moment in time. So it's a bit crazy that they're not going to help fund Elon Musk, who is a bit of a national hero when you think about what he's done over there, providing SpaceX over there and Starlink internet access for those who desperately need it. It's not just helping out the civilian populace, it's also helping out the military over there. The military use the internet as well for everything. So this man deserves a medal. He's a bit of a hero in my eyes. I think he should be getting a little bit more help if he's actually requested it. And that help from the requestees is actually, they're spending a lot of money anyway. So it's crazy. Now, The Independent also mentioned Belarusian media. Russian troops have arrived in Belarus in the coming days. Now, the transfer is allegedly meant to protect the country's border and reduce military activity in nearby areas. Deputy Chief of Belarus General Staff Viktor Tumar told state-controlled media Belter. That's a belter if I've ever heard it as well. We've seen similar escalations in the build-up to this war about troops, getting closer to the front lines and in alleged military training exercises. So we can't really take that for what it is. Bearing in mind, 6, 7, 8 months ago, the same thing happened on the Russian-Ukraine border. Guess what? A special operation was launched, and we all knew it was coming. So Belarus is saying the same thing. I predict that they're probably going to, probably going to push troops in through Belarus, and that would be drastic in terms of its effect in the north of Ukraine. We can see potentially a different counteroffensive from Ukraine, fighting in different regions due to the ongoing tensions and the potential invasion from the Belarusian border. I think it's crazy, guys, but that's what I personally think. I would like to hear your thoughts on that. Now, Ukrainian women. We haven't talked about Ukrainian women in particular in this war, so this is going to be quite a good read. Who make up about a fifth of the country's armed forces are commanders of platoons, leaders of aviation units, and snipers on the battlefield in the fight against Russia. Ukrainian troops include almost that many women, more than 20% of the total, and 5,000 are on the front lines in areas of active hostility, says the commander of its armed forces. So it just proves in a time of war that, you know, women on the front lines are necessary. I have my mixed opinions on it. It's not going to be fit for this show at this moment in time, but, you know, they're doing the bit over there. And in times of need, beggars can't be choosy, and Ukraine needs all the help it can get. So, yeah, is it a good thing that they've got that extra aid? Yes. Would I like to see a world where we don't have to put our women on the front lines? Of course I would. Is it is it realistic and achievable at this moment in time? It probably is not. You know, we do need them at the end of the day. And for me, it goes above and beyond equality and diversity. It's just the fact that, you know, they need people power. I was going to say manpower there, but it kind of defeats the object of the title of that, doesn't it, really? But yeah, there's a lot of Ukrainian women on the front lines over there and losing their lives as well. So we have to show that respect, troops, okay? Now, Belarus provides over 60 tanks, dozens of vehicles to Russia. Belarusian watchdog Belarusian Hajun reported that over the past week, Belarus has transported at least 67 T-72 tanks and 27 Ural military trucks from its Mohylo region to Russia. Escalation, escalation, escalation. What else have we got? One more article, I think. Right, as Ukrainian forces zero in on the southern city of Kherson, occupied by Russian troops since early in the war, a Russian official is urging civilians to take your children and leave for Russia. Make of that as you wish, guys. Make of that as you wish. But there's some footage came out that I wanted to show you guys. Really, really interesting, this, to say the least. And it's something that I think happens more than you would like to think, more than you could imagine. But it hasn't really been reported on too much. It's definitely something I would utilize if I had this cheap bit of equipment. Now, we've got drone versus drone warfare happening right now in Ukraine. Ukraine and Russia are fighting each other with commercial drones that are spying on the front lines. Okay, drones are very effective because you can get it with reasonable in quick succession as well, with relatively no training, a drone into the sky, getting eyes on the enemy positions or enemies' locations and stuff like that. Really, really good bits of kit. Now, we look at this, you can see that they're actually being used to take each other out. Instead of firing weapon systems at them, costing a lot of money, send a drone up, counteract it. This is how the arms race starts. All right, you get bits of kit, you match that bits of kit, and then you have to try and take that bit of kit out, and then you have to escalate it. So what's going to happen as a result of this is, you know, one of these drones is going to end up arming itself to be able to counteract this, and you probably use an autonomous weaponry or something like that. Okay, so that's how these things develop, and before you know it, 5-10 years down the line, you've got massive autonomous drones that are flying around with weapon systems on them, firing at each other. But let's have a look at this, troops. It's interesting. Okay, so yeah, drones are fighting each other now. That's something that I think we're going to see a lot more of, to be honest with you. Really, really interesting times, guys. Now, that's 18 minutes long. We've got a lot more to get into, so if you want to see more of these updates at a more frequent basis, please let me know. I am happy to do so, troops, okay? But if you want to support the channel, please consider joining the Patreon. What we're doing now as well, and you could class it as a bit of a podcast, I guess, we're putting audio files on the Patreon that are only going to be accessible to patrons, guys, okay? It looks really, really promising. People are enjoying it as well, so it's a different way to divulge into content. And if you want to hear what I have to say in a more uncensored manner, then please consider joining the Patreon, and Rumble is below as well. We're putting out content on there, guys. But if you are still here to the end, thank you, thank you, thank you, and I will see you in the next video, hopefully very soon. If you want me to do more videos, guys, I will do these videos all day, every day. Okay? Wherever you are, stay safe.